Hey guys, so today I am going to show you how I do my surface design that looks like this with the black underglaze design. So I just use a paper stencil. I make them in a lot of different sizes and different number of leaves on the stem and stuff like that. And I just use newsprint. Real easy, it sticks to the pot really well. So what I'll do is I just fold up the newsprint and I'll just draw my desired pattern on there real loose, and then I'll cut it out with an X-Acto. And I just use one of these scrapbooking X-Actos. You can hold them on your finger. It gives you really good control, and the blade pivots and turns. So when I'm cutting these really delicate areas, it really helps to have a blade that moves with the drawing. But I'm not going to cut any out now because I already have a bunch that I pre-cut. And I just use jet black Amico Underglaze from their Velvet series. Shake it up really well. I use a soft bristle brush. I find that if you use the brushes that have a more coarse texture, it leaves strokes in your underglaze, which is not something that I'm looking for. And I use a squirt bottle and a sponge and some water. So all I do is I just pick up whatever stencil I'm going to start with. I give the pot a spray. And can you see the stencil, since it's made out of this newsprint, it just absorbs the water and sticks to the pot. You have to play with it a little bit to make sure you get it to stick right where you want it to. And you do have to be a little bit careful since it is newsprint. It can rip pretty easily. So I'm getting this paper pretty saturated. So after I get it stuck on with the spray bottle, I'm going to go back over it with my sponge. And I'm just gently wiping along the edges of the stencil because I really want it to stick to the clay, because I don't want it to bleed under the stencil and then I'll have this big glob next to my pattern that's not intentional, that I don't want. So that one's stuck. I'm going to go on the other side, do the same thing, let that one dry a little bit before I go back on with the underglaze. And so I am doing this process on a colander. So I have the holes poked in. One word of advice is you want to do all your hole cleanup before you apply the underglaze, because you don't want to wipe off the underglaze when you're going back in and cleaning up any crunchies that might be left from poking your holes in your strainer, if you're making a strainer. Okay, So the reason I let this one stiffen up a little bit before I go back and put the underglaze on is because if there's too much liquid, you're not going to get a good first coat of your underglaze. It's going to be too thin. And you have to apply 3 coats of this to get a nice opaque surface. So that's the first coat. I'm going to let it dry. I'm going to do the same thing here. And when I'm brushing this on, you can see the tip of the leaf is here, and I'm starting there and coming down so that I'm not encouraging any bleeding under the paper stencil. For the first coat, I really try and go against or with the cuts so that I know it's really stuck down, and when I go over with the second coat, I can paint it anyway because it's completely sealed from that first coat. So I'm just going to continue this process all the way around the piece. It takes a little bit of time, you know, because you have to do 3 coats of each, but so I'll go through, do 1 round, 1 coat, then 2 coat, 3 coat, so that I don't lose track. Okay, so I have 3 coats on each one of my stencils. You really want to make sure that it dries in between each coat so you can get really good even coverage and that it's opaque. And now it's time to remove the stencil, and this is probably my favorite part of the process because it's so satisfying. So I just grab a corner and start to pull it up. And then that's it. And you can see it bled a little tiny bit right there, which I can clean up with a needle tool later on. But this is really the best part of the whole stencil process. So really that's all there is to this process. I'll just, you know, put it on my shelf and let it dry to get ready for the bisque firing. And then when I glaze it, I'm gonna use a transparent glaze to glaze it, because if you use an opaque glaze, it's just gonna completely wash over your design and cover it up. So transparent, definitely what you want to do when you're using underglazes to do a design. You know, Celadons are great. I use a lot of Celadons by Amico Brent. So that's it. This was a viewer request video, which I love getting. If you have a request on any technique or how to make something, I would love to hear about it. Leave it in the comments and I can make it my next video, and be sure to subscribe. Thanks guys.